Okay, welcome. So, failed F1 driver Martin Brundle says that Piastri, when it comes to Piastri, Verstappen drives against Piastri differently than to what he drives against Norris. And he says that Verstappen can look in Piastri's eyes, especially after how Piastri upstaged him. Where was it? It was in Jeddah at the start, and knows that Piastri ain't going to take rubbish. So he drives him with a lot more against him with a lot more respect. I don't know if that's true, but we know that they have a history going back starting last year in which I think it was at the Austrian Grand Prix, the US Grand Prix, and the Mexico Grand Prix where Verstappen might have done a few dodgy things against Norris because he felt he could get away with it. He got a 20-second penalty for one of them, and he got a 5-second penalty in Austria where he knocked Norris out of the track. And we've noticed that other than that, he hasn't had any incidents with Norris except for the incident at last week's race in Miami, where he held his ground, kind of pushed Norris a little bit. But to me, that wasn't such an aggressive move. He would have done the same thing to Piastri, I believe, because if you notice, the week before that, he went out of the track and then overtook Piastri and didn't give it back. So I don't think Verstappen changes his driving towards anyone. I think last year he was a little bit aggressive with Norris. I'll get to why I think that is the case. But I think that this year his racecraft has improved. And if you notice, he's the same with everybody. He holds his ground, but he's not doing anything flagrant. He used to do flagrant stuff against Lewis Hamilton when he was younger, almost killed Hamilton, basically. But I think he's calmed down, and I don't think the difference is in that he drives Piastri different to Norris. I think the difference is that Norris is a motherfucking scared of him and drives like a pussy around him because Norris is afraid of what he'll do to him. I think it's the other way around. Max doesn't alter his driving for anybody. Norris alters his driving for Verstappen. And in general, Norris has really, really bad racecraft. It took him to lap 30 to pass Verstappen in last week in Miami in a car that was almost a second a lap faster. After the race, he says Max drives hard. I think he's just taking out his frustration. What do you think, Kunle?
Yeah, well, like we've seen with Norris, not just during the race, but also during the qualifiers, he's always making mistakes at times. And, all of these races, it's where you finish in your qualifier tends to dictate what's going to happen in the race. So I think that Norris's problem are the mistakes that he keeps making. He has a
and do you think that Verstappen drives against him any harder than he drives against anybody else, or is it just Norris?
Yeah. I think it's just Norris. I think Norris is his own because Piastri is now beginning to outdo him. I don't think Verstappen is that concerned with Norris. If anything, he'd be more concerned with Piastri than Norris right now.
Yeah.
I think Piastri take a more.
I will say that Verstappen respects Piastri more. That doesn't mean on the track, because he made statements like, "Oh yeah, Piastri's good. He got me," and he said he has Mark Webber, which is good and everything. I think he has more respect. But let's go back. Okay, let's see what your thoughts are first. Then we'll go to my point about where I think things went wrong between Piastri and Verstappen. I mean, Norris and Verstappen. What are your thoughts in general, Afolabi?
Yeah, like Kole said, Norris is just generally more error prone. Piastri is a more, settled driver. But it says Verstappen describes Piastri as a street fighter. And I think Piastri is actually more tenacious and unpredictable.
Yeah, and Piastri is a scavenger too. If you
I believe he's more tenacious. And I think sometimes Verstappen tends to put more pressure on Lando because he knows that wheel to wheel, Lando is more susceptible to making errors.
Basically. Okay, that might be the case. Yeah, Verstappen might take more risks
against psychological
Lando.
Thing.
Yeah, he might take more risks against Lando. But where all of this started, Afolabi, do you remember last year at the Spanish Grand Prix, Lando and Verstappen were best friends. Verstappen had never raced Lando hard. Then at the start of the Spanish Grand Prix, Lando Norris pushed Verstappen into the grass. Yes, and then after the race, they asked Lando, "Did you push him?" He said, "No." And then Verstappen said, "I think Lando Norris needs glasses." Remember that? That's when Verstappen started driving badly, aggressively against Lando. Yes. And Verstappen doesn't like it when he feels that somebody is out to get him. Like with George. Remember when George Russell saw Verstappen driving slow on an off lap, and he almost hit Verstappen, but then he got Verstappen penalized. Remember that in Vegas last year. So once you get into Verstappen's radar, he then starts to hate you. Like, for example, Verstappen respects Leclerc, and they race. And I've never seen Verstappen try to push Leclerc. Have you noticed that? So I think that Verstappen knows that Leclerc is his mate. But I think he lost respect for Norris when Norris pushed him off the grass. Kunle, do you remember that incident? A lot of people don't talk about it, where Norris pushed Verstappen into the grass at the start in the Spanish Grand Prix last year. Do you remember that, Kunle? Yeah.
I vaguely remember
Yeah.
that.
That was, and a week later, that was when Verstappen had the collision. I think because Verstappen is old, so I gave you, you didn't give me space. So from now on, I won't, because we know that Verstappen holds grudges. For a year or two, he didn't talk to Toto Wolff because Toto Wolff didn't call him after he got into an accident with Hamilton, and remember when he had a concussion, Verstappen. So Verstappen remembers things. So I think what happened, I think in history, I mean, I think people need to go back to that race, the Spanish race where he pushed Verstappen off the track, because that's when Verstappen's behavior changed. But if you notice, Verstappen has calmed down now. He hasn't been pushing Norris this year. I mean, last race, he sort of edged him out, but that was more like race aggression rather than what do you think, Kool-Aid, where last week where Verstappen sort of forced, not forced, but he held his ground and slightly pushed Norris. I don't think that was him being overly aggressive. I just think it was the usual race aggression you see from guys like Senna or any really good driver, where he pushes the edge a little bit. What do you think about that, Kunle? Yeah.
I think that Verstappen has a little bit more mental strength. I remember that last incident and the last race. They were both blaming each other for the incident.
To me, it was more like competitiveness. It wasn't flagrant or malicious. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I think that the problem that Norris has, his biggest weakness that he has, is his mental strength. I think he has. I think that Verstappen, in particular, gives him what's the word I'm looking for when you're not confident. Insecurity makes him. There's an insecurity around Norris when it comes to Verstappen. Yeah. I think with Piastri, Norris. You know, he doesn't fear Piastri, although really he should, but he fears Verstappen. Verstappen intimidates him. And I think he tries to substitute that intimidation, tries to accommodate for that intimidation by being aggressive. Constantly mistake, he would rather happen for that mistake. He doesn't want to admit to anything whenever he has a mistake.
And I think you're right. I think that Norris, because he feels intimidated with Verstappen, he drives more aggressively against Verstappen and then makes mistakes because of it. So he's not thinking tactically, you know. Like if we look at last week's race, Verstappen held off and here's the thing, Verstappen drives everybody the same. He held off Norris, he held off Piastri for 30 laps, first 30 laps, even Piastri. Piastri's car was a lot faster than Verstappen, and Verstappen defended perfectly. Then eventually he had to let Piastri pass. Then he defended Norris for a long time. Then eventually he had to let Norris go. It was the same type of defensive strategies he used. And actually both of them had to struggle mightily. I think, like you said, Norris has less skill racecraft-wise and struggled more to pass Verstappen in Miami than Piastri did. But both of them struggled. And what Verstappen did, and now Verstappen is almost 30 years old. He's no longer the crazy teenager he was. His defending now is it's not emotional anymore. It's purely logical. He takes the lines he can take, but he's just becoming more accurate and more skilled. What do you think of Falabi?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's just the mental fortitude and the psychological driving ability of Norris is just very weak. He's not as mentally strong as Max Verstappen, and he has basically he has I don't know if for want of a better word, inferiority complex compared to Max Verstappen. If you look at the way Verstappen drove the qualifying in Suzuka, it takes someone with nerves of steel and balls to have driven that well. You know, Norris could have gotten himself into an incident if he
would hit the wall, or that's why he's been backing off from qualifiers, because he doesn't have the nerve.
So I don't think it's more like Verstappen changing or adapting. I think it's Norris himself. If he was wheel to wheel against Piastri, he would just have been more susceptible to making errors than if compared to Verstappen. So I think the problem is with Norris, not necessarily Verstappen.
And I think Kool-Aid is right. Norris is busy looking at Verstappen. Meanwhile, his own teammate is the champion, is actually the threat to win the whole championship. And this starts with 2005. That might be his
problem this season. Piastri's form has improved.
It started at the beginning of the season. Norris said, yes, I'm going to win. He said, this is my year. And the reason he said this is my year is because he knew the Red Bull was rubbish. But he didn't realize he still has to beat his own teammate. He didn't realize that his teammate would improve so much this year. And to be honest with you, I think, what were you going to say, Kunle?
Yeah, the thing about Piastri, he's in car 2. So he's not under the pressure of expectation that Norris is under. And that also, I think, works in Piastri's favor because he knows that he's outperforming where he's supposed to be. And even if he drops a level, he's still accomplishing what he needs to be doing. So Piastri has not really been to see whether what his mental strength is unless he becomes
because he's the underdog. He's the underdog. Once he becomes he's the underdog. But what if all of Australia say, yes, the Australian boy is the best. He's going to beat Max. Everybody, come on, you can do it. As soon as they say that to him, yes, he too will start to get nervous. He's like, oh boy, no, I'm an underdog. Please, don't tell me I'm champion. So that's what you're saying. In a couple of years, you'll start seeing Piastri fold under the pressure too. Yeah, sorry. So Kuna, what are your last thoughts? And then we'll go to Afalabi, then we'll be out.
Yeah, so it's been a good show today. We're enjoying looking at the rivalry. It's fastest cars. We haven't really discussed the vulture. I consider Russell a vulture because once anybody messes up in those top three, Russell is like a grim reaper that'll gobble up anyone that makes mistakes. Imola is coming in 8 days from now, and let's see what drama unfolds in the next.
Yeah, cool. Perfect example. Russell was quiet all last week. Everybody was talking about Antonelli. Antonelli qualified P3. Antonelli qualified number 1 for the sprint race. Then all of a sudden, when the race was over, the final race was over, Russell was 3rd. You see how Russell is a very deadly guy. And he always wins on weeks where he's invisible, where nobody talks about him. Yeah. But he doesn't care. He doesn't want the glory like people. He doesn't want the limelight like Norris. He said, okay, I don't need the newspapers to talk about me. So that's definitely the case. All right, so Afolabi, take us out. Last thoughts.
Yeah, so basically I feel the pressure is on Norris, not because of Verstappen, but because of Piastri. I mean, we have had 6 races, and Piastri has won 4. That is dominant. So I think going into Imola, Norris too would have his work well cut out. He should stop thinking about Verstappen and think about his teammates. Basically, that's just what I feel. And the common denominator here is the ability of the McLaren car. It's just in his head and shoulders superiority above other cars. But in Imola is a kind of a technical track. I fancy Verstappen. It's one of his favorite tracks.
Yeah, I think Verstappen will qualify first, and he may even win because in Imola you don't have to worry about tire drag. Because it's a fast track. Yeah.
And his one-lap pace is even better than the McLaren driver. His one-lap pace for me.
Sorry to go back to you, Kunle. I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. What are your predictions for Imola?
My prediction for Imola, I think Verstappen win it. I think Russell is going to come 3rd, and I think Piastri is going to come 2nd. I think Norris is actually either going to make a mistake or find himself in the tangle with Russell. I have a feeling that's how this race is going to go.
Yeah, that's what happened. Hey, Kule, at ISL, they asked no AFY, what do you think about Imola? It's very good with Ben Giri. All right, guys, let's get out of here. So this was a good one. So we're not going to do a show tomorrow on F1. We'll come back on Monday to do more about Imola. Thank you. So, Kule, enjoy your day off tomorrow. All right.
Okay.
Oh, did you guys see Traore is in Russia with Putin, and in America they blocked it from the news. These Americans are stupid. You can't hide the truth. They showed Traore. He was standing right behind Putin. Putin shook his hand. That's what I've been saying. There's no way they can touch this guy. And Xi was there. Xi, Traore, Putin. They were all shaking hands. Game over. And then this guy is still sending these rubbish texts. He's trying to redeem himself. Saeed. No way. All right, man. All right, we'll talk later, guys. Have a good one.
All right, sure.